I still remember the sound of my phone buzzing that morning, sharp, insistent, like it knew the past was about to claw its way back into my carefully built present. I was standing by the wide glass window of my office, silk blouse brushing against my skin, watching the city come alive beneath me. From up here, everything looked controlled. Neat lines of traffic, skyscrapers shining in the sun, people moving with purpose. And then I saw the message. It wasn't even dramatic, just a picture. A real estate listing. My childhood home. The house where I'd scraped my knees on the driveway, cried into my pillow, whispered secrets into the dark. Sold again. A new family smiling in front of it like it had always been theirs. My breath caught, and for a second I pressed my hand against the glass, grounding myself. Because how do you explain it? How do you explain what it feels like to be erased from your own story? Not once, but twice? The first time still burned. The day my parents sold that house without telling me, sold it while I was still living there, as if I were just another piece of furniture that didn't belong. And here I was now, years later, successful, composed, the woman everyone thought had it all together. And yet, with a single photo, the cracks began to show. Because no matter how far you run, betrayal has a way of finding you. I was 20, old enough to think I understood the world, young enough to believe home was still safe. That day started like any other. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, pouring cereal into a chipped bowl I'd had since middle school. The morning light slanted through the curtains, catching dust in the air, and for a moment everything felt ordinary, familiar, until the knock came. It wasn't my parents. They were already gone for work. It was a couple I'd never seen before. A man with a clipboard, a woman holding a folder of papers. Behind them, a moving truck idled at the curb. "Are your parents home?" the woman asked kindly, as if she were the one intruding. I frowned, shifting the bowl in my hand. "No." "Why?" Her eyes softened. "We're here for the walkthrough. The closing was finalized yesterday." Walkthrough? Closing? My throat tightened, cereal forgotten, spoon slipping against porcelain. I must have looked like an idiot, standing there in sweatpants, hair messy, staring blankly. Because she added, almost apologetically, "You must be their daughter." I don't remember what I said, or if I said anything at all. I just remember the sound of my heart hammering in my ears, the sting of tears threatening but refusing to fall. By the time my parents came home that evening, strangers were already walking through the hallway, pointing at the crown molding, opening closets that still held my clothes. I confronted them in the kitchen, the same one where we'd once laughed over burnt pancakes and birthday candles. "You sold the house? Without telling me?" My mother didn't look at me. My father just sighed, the way he always did when I asked for too much. "It's not your decision," he said flatly. "You'll understand when you're older." Older? I was standing in the ruins of my childhood, watching people measure the living room for their furniture, and they told me I'd understand later. That night, when the walls felt like they were closing in, I found myself clutching the small silver locket my grandmother had given me when I was 13. Inside was a photo of her, the only person who ever told me I was enough just as I was. Her words echoed in my memory. "When they silence you, child, let that be the moment you speak the loudest." So I packed. Not much, a duffel bag, a few notebooks, that locket pressed against my heart. If home no longer belonged to me, then I would find a way to build one for myself. And that was the night I walked out. Leaving home with nothing but a duffel bag felt like stepping off a cliff. I had no plan, no safety net, just the echo of slammed doors behind me and the locket against my skin. The first nights were the hardest. I stayed on a friend's couch, then another's. I told them it was temporary, but the truth was, I didn't know where I belonged anymore. Every sound in the dark felt heavier, every silence lonelier. But pain has a strange way of sharpening you, of stripping you bare until all that's left is the decision: break or build. I chose build. It started small. A job at a tiny coffee shop on the edge of downtown. Minimum wage, long shifts, the smell of espresso clinging to my hair. I wiped tables, refilled creamers, smiled at strangers. Most of them never saw me, but one woman did. Her name was Evelyn. She was in her 50s, silver hair cut sharp, her heels clicking with the authority of someone who owned every room she entered. She ordered the same thing every morning, a black Americano, and one day, when the rush had finally quieted, she lingered. "You've got quick hands," she said, watching me balance a tray. "And sharper eyes. What are you really doing here?" I froze, half embarrassed, trying to figure that out. Something in my answer must have struck her, because a week later, she slid a business card across the counter. Evelyn Hart, Interior Design and Consulting. "Call me," she said simply. I did. That was the first door. Working for Evelyn wasn't glamorous at first. I hauled fabric samples, carried boxes of swatches, took notes in meetings where no one remembered my name. But Evelyn saw me. She pushed me to sketch, to give opinions, to trust my taste. And slowly, I found my voice. There were nights I sat on the floor of my tiny rented room, sketchbook open, hands stained with ink, doubting everything. Was I fooling myself? Was I destined to stay small, invisible? But then the winds came, little sparks that lit the dark. The first time Evelyn let me lead a client presentation, the first design board I created that got approved without a single change, the first check with my name on it, earned not from coffee refills but from creativity. I held on to those moments like lifelines, and through it all, I stayed silent with my family. They thought I was scraping by, struggling, maybe even failing. I let them think that. I posted modest photos, a coffee mug on a desk, a blurry city skyline. Never the sleek office, never the high-end clients, never the quiet rise that was happening right under their noses. Because success, I decided, would be my secret weapon. One day, I promised myself I'd show them. Not out of spite, but to prove the girl they dismissed could build a world stronger than the one they sold from under her feet. And I did. But the day they came back into my life, that was when the real story began. It was a Thursday afternoon when my parents called. Years had passed with only scattered texts and stiff holiday messages. But that day, their voices carried something different. Urgency. Desperation. "We need to talk," my father said. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe curiosity won. Maybe some part of me still wanted them to see me, really see me, after all this time. They arrived at my office unannounced. Evelyn had warned me to keep my private and professional lives separate, but something inside me whispered, "Let them come. Let them see." The elevator opened with a soft chime, and there they were. My mother in a beige cardigan, clutching her purse like a shield. My father, shoulders squared, his jaw tight as ever. They looked older, smaller somehow, and then they stepped inside. My office wasn't extravagant in the gaudy sense. No gold, no marble pillars. It was elegance with purpose. Floor-to-ceiling windows washed the room in light. A statement wall lined with sketches and mood boards. Polished oak shelves held design books, photographs from projects, and one frame tucked neatly in the corner. A picture of me at 12, standing on the porch of the very house they had sold without a word. They froze. I let the silence stretch. The click of my heels echoed as I crossed the room, pouring myself a glass of water, giving them time to take it all in. Their eyes darted from the modern art on the wall to the awards lined discreetly along a shelf. My name etched in glass and metal. Undeniable. My mother's lips parted. This is yours? I met her gaze evenly. Every inch. My father cleared his throat, trying to recover authority. You've done well for yourself. I almost laughed. Done well. As if this were a hobby I'd accidentally stumbled into, not nights of blood, sweat, and silence. What did you expect to find? I asked quietly, leaning against my desk. A broken girl living paycheck to paycheck? Someone you could rescue? They didn't answer. Shame flickered across their faces, quickly masked. I set down my glass and folded my arms. When you sold our house without telling me, you didn't just take away walls and furniture. You took away the ground under my feet. But what you didn't know— I gestured to the office, to the city glittering beyond the glass— was that you were pushing me to build something unshakable, on my own terms. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears. My father shifted uncomfortably, his pride cracking but not shattered. The silence was thick, almost unbearable, until I broke it. You wanted to talk, I said. So talk. Why are you here? For the first time, my father's voice faltered. We made some bad investments. The money's gone. We thought— He hesitated, then forced the words out. We thought you could help. There it was. The twist of irony so sharp it nearly made me smile. The same people who once stripped me of a home were now standing in mine, asking for shelter. I took a slow breath, steady, controlled. Inside, the girl with the chipped cereal bowl and the trembling hands still whispered, but the woman in me had the floor now. Help is possible, I said at last, but not without conditions. Their heads snapped up. Conditions? They hadn't expected that. They had expected either bitterness or blind forgiveness, not power, not boundaries. And for the first time in my life, I saw it. The shift. The balance of power tilting finally in my favor. The silence after my words lingered like a held breath. My parents shifted in their chairs, suddenly unsure of the script. For once, they weren't directing the scene. I was. Conditions? My father repeated, his voice low, defensive. Yes, I said simply, letting the syllable cut clean through the room. I walked slowly back to my desk, running my fingers lightly across the grain of the polished wood. Every movement deliberate, measured. If you want my help, it comes with boundaries. Real ones. My mother leaned forward, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. We didn't come here for lectures. I met her eyes. Number you came here because you thought I'd give, without question. Like I always did. But those days are over. I let that sink in. Then, with a steadiness I had once begged for from them, I laid it out. First, honesty. No more secrets. No more closed doors. If you want my support, you'll speak the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. My father bristled, opening his mouth, but I lifted a hand. Second, respect. You don't get to dismiss my voice anymore. You don't get to tell me I'll understand when I'm older. I am older now, and I understand more than you ever gave me credit for. Their faces tightened, pride prickling, but I didn't stop. Third, growth. If I help you, it's not to bail you out so you can repeat old mistakes. You'll seek counseling for the toxic patterns that pushed us apart. You'll cut ties with the gambling, the bad investments, the constant denial. And you'll do it because it's time to stop pretending everything is fine when it isn't. I could feel my voice trembling at the edges, not with weakness, but with conviction. This wasn't about revenge. It was about rewriting the rules. My mother's tears slipped free then, silent streaks down her face. My father stared at the floor, jaw working, the fight draining out of him. Finally, I leaned forward, my tone softer but firm. And last, you will never again treat me as if I don't belong. Not in your lives, not in your choices, not in your family. I am not a piece of furniture you can move, not a child to silence. I am your daughter, and you will treat me as such. The words landed like stones dropped into still water, rippling out, impossible to ignore. For a long time, they said nothing. And for the first time in years, I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let them sit in it. I let them feel what it was like to stand on the other side of power. When my father finally spoke, his voice was low, cracked in a way I had never heard. And, if we agree? I exhaled slowly, the weight of years lifting with it. Then maybe, I said, we can begin again. But this time, on my terms. The weeks that followed weren't magic. No sudden transformation, no neat bow to tie around years of wounds. Change is slower than that. It's messy. It's human. But something shifted. My parents began showing up differently. My mother, for the first time in decades, admitted she was scared. Scared of losing not just money, but connection. My father, stiff and resistant at first, started attending counseling. I could see the discomfort in his eyes, the way it stripped him raw to face his own patterns. But he went. That was something. I didn't rush forgiveness. I didn't fold into the girl who once begged for their approval. Instead, I stood steady, offering support when they honored the conditions, pulling back when they slipped. Boundaries, balance. And in that space, something unexpected bloomed. Respect. One evening, as I was leaving my office, I caught sight of the framed photo on the shelf. 12-year-old me on that porch, smiling at a future I couldn't see yet. My chest tightened. I reached up and touched the silver locket around my neck, the one that had been with me since the night I left. My grandmother's voice echoed like a heartbeat. When they silence you, child, let that be the moment you speak the loudest. I smiled, not bitterly, but with the quiet triumph of a woman who had survived herself into power. Because yes, my parents had sold my childhood home without telling me, while I was still living there. They had taken the roof above my head, the place I thought I belonged. But in the rubble of that betrayal, I built something greater. A life. A name. A home no one could ever take from me again. Now, when people walk into my world, whether family, strangers, or clients, they see not the girl who was erased, but the woman who rewrote her story. And that is the version of me that will last. I am not the house they sold. I am the foundation they never saw coming.